And welcome back. This is our final segment, and as we mentioned, we're going to be discussing financial management. The two issues that we've been discussing for the past half hour or so are very much interrelated, how we manage time and how we manage money. With that said, we're joined by Ms. Coreen Fuller. Good morning. Good morning. Ms. Coreen Fuller is from the
Credit Union League.
Here to talk about financial management.
Yeah.
And don't cover your ears, because we cannot end up in this January situation
every year
if we pay attention to this segment.
January is a good month to start the discussion.
Yeah.
I think sometimes in December nobody wants to hear you because we're all taken up with Christmas and getting things sorted out. But the gentleman just now said that he starts preparing for Christmas from January. That's a good thing. That's one of the good tips, that we could leave with. But budgeting is important, and managing your debt is also important, because it can really, if you don't do it, you could end up in a very bad situation.
Can I tell you, there are many topics I can think of that I learned in primary school that I don't use today.
Yeah.
And I wish they were substituted with learning how to budget and learning life skills like time management. Because these are the things that you catch up with in your adulthood that are so important.
Exactly. So one of the things that I always tell people is to include their families when they're doing their budgeting, because it will go a long way. And if they learn to manage their finances from their children, then it won't be so difficult when they're older. So you're right, Marlene. I think that's something that we should probably, try to include in our schools, indeed.
And I think parents also don't realize that their financial habits are what their children tend to do as well.
Yeah.
Like the people I know who save well have parents who save well.
Or at least some, for parents, at least some of the children.
Some of it,
some of it rubs off on some of the children.
My habits are very similar to my mother's habits, So you don't even realize that you have learned how to spend, save, use, based on what you saw as well.
And I don't know when you were growing up it was the same thing, but when I was growing up, money was never really discussed.
No.
It was always an adult kind of thing. It was never discussed. But
we see.
Yes, we see. Their actions, spoke much louder than words.
If I can reflect on my upbringing in terms of being around my mom and my dad, and the fact that there is a monthly budget, for instance.
Yeah.
The fact that they were both educators, they have a monthly salary.
Yes.
So whatever projections are based on a 4-week cycle.
Yes.
So they would know when to go and buy groceries, when the bills would need to be paid, when loans, when savings, and all of these things based on that 30-day calendar, so to speak.
It is so true.
That is good. But one of the things that I always like to talk about is making a monthly budget is important, but you have to keep in mind the bigger picture, what your goals are. Because if, for example, I'll just use an example. Say in December, you get maybe December is a month that you get more of your pay than any other month. And if you only focus on that 30 days, you would tend to want to spend all that money in December, but recognize that you have January and February and so on. So if you say you get your bonus in December and you spend all of that on Christmas, and you have forgotten that in March you have to pay your car insurance, in July you probably have to, a child is graduating, you could lose track of what is important. So the monthly budget is very important, but you have to keep in mind what your goals are, what your objectives are for the longer period, what your short term, medium, and long term.
Okay, now we're going to take this for the people who are listening who are struggling this January, because no matter how many years we say we won't spend too much at Christmas, we still did, and we have never been successful at budgeting. But with your conversation, we're gonna try again, right?
Yeah.
So let's use an example of someone who makes $1,000 a month. I think that's an easier number to work with than most, right? What are the crucial steps in putting together your budget? You talk about having an overall vision.
Yeah.
So let's start there.
Find out what do you want to accomplish. In the long term, it might be you need to get a car. Maybe that's long term for some people. In the short term, it might be in a couple of months your child is going to school. You know, that's medium. Say in the short term, in the next couple of months, you need to get something done. So the important thing is to put some time and thought into it.
Okay.
Don't just, go from day to day. If you go from day to day, $1,000 and finish very quickly, or whatever amount you make. It's good if you don't have a purpose.
Yeah.
So the idea is to, what will you do with your money? What are the things that you want to accomplish? And write those things down. It's important to have the discussion and write it down, because sometimes you forget.
So when you
down payment for a mortgage,
things like that.
Yeah.
What are your plans?
Yeah.
So when you do budget, and I'm assuming this is 101 for that type of activity.
Yeah.
When you do budget, one has to look at recurrent expenses.
Yeah.
Things like your water bill, light, food, etc. Those remain fixed.
Those are
in terms
constant.
of
Yes.
And in
Those are
terms
constant.
of creating that budget, do you look at either cost effectiveness in terms of minimizing? For instance, let's take the water bill for instance. If you can minimize your consumption of water when it's not necessary, all of that allows you then to be able to curtail on that particular expense and have more money either to spend or to save.
Yes.
That has to do with discipline.
Exactly.
It has to do with being able to say, you know what, this is my target and I have to be committed to doing so.
Yes.
I think it's the most challenging thing for most of us.
Interesting. Because usually, see, this is budgeting. This is important. So when you put your budget for your expenses, you're putting what you want to spend?
But actually, you first start, so the first thing is, what do I want? I know I have these monthly things, and I know I have short-term goals and medium and long-term. So you put all of that down.
Okay.
And then actually the next step is to determine your income.
Okay.
Sometimes we make, we make a regular salary, but sometimes we get regular money otherwise. For some people it might be they get maintenance for the children. Sometimes you have another job that you get a regular.
Overtime.
Sometimes you get overtime. But for the overtime, if it is a regular thing, you have to make sure that you manage it properly so that when it's no longer there, you're not, left in a bad way. So you identify your income and you don't pay too much attention to windfall gains because you don't know when those will happen.
Exactly.
Neither on other people's money.
You don't budget, you don't plan on other people's money.
So plan out, what you are going to get for sure, and write it down.
Okay.
Some people don't know how much money they make, and they do get a regular salary. Sometimes they really don't know. Some people, they do, jobs on a regular basis, and the other jobs outside of work, and they get a regular income from that. So it is good to write that down so that you could see the picture. You could see what
even have syndicate.
Yes, some people have money. They know they are going to get this amount of money from syndicate and so on.
So determine how much you're going to make.
Look at because that really will tell you what you can plan. If you make $1,000 a month, you can't expect to go to to spend a lot of money on certain things unless you really make some good plans to get there. So knowing how much you make and putting that in front of you is very important, because that gives you the outer boundaries of how you'll be able to operate.
Ask this. You mentioned something that immediately jumped out at me and caught my interest. The fact that you don't plan for windfall expenses or windfall gains. I call those like unplanned for and incidental stuff that pops up out of nowhere. You have an extra $200. However, how is one able to be like to save that money or to spend it effectively, seeing as though this came out of the blue basically? You landed on a couple $100 that wasn't planned for.
Well, those are lovely, aren't they?
Those are
so what I'm saying,
prays for that.
So what I'm saying, your regular things that you should be spending your money on, those windfall gains, you don't know when you're going to get it, but when you get it, you have to be wise too. You have to make good decisions about them. So my first thing is that if you don't have an emergency fund, you could start it with some of those windfall gains. Put that money aside. And we probably should have another show on, how to make sure that you're prepared for emergencies. You could do so many things with those windfall gains. You could, if you have a plan to do something, you could put some of it towards it and to reach that goal quicker. Things like that. So it's not that you get this windfall gain from whatever source and it's just you just spend it, splurge it because you just have it. It makes sense for you to plan for that money as well. But what I was saying is that you don't use that in your regular planning because you don't know when you're going to get it. But when you do get it, you make some good moves with it.
So don't expect a couple hundred extra or to be and committed to rent. So let's start off. So we know what we're going to make. We have add up all the side jobs and our regulars, income.
Yes, and
we know what we should make on a monthly basis.
Then you go to your expenses now, right? And
subtracting your income tax if you pay tax or okay.
Because usually you get that anyway. Unless you're self-employed or you're on a contract where you have to pay that yourself. So the next step now is to look on your expenses. You know what your regular expenses are. And that's a little intricate step and it takes a little time. Because what you want to do is to set a budget. But the first thing you have to do is to really see what you're spending your money on right now. And that takes a little while for you to really figure it out. It means writing down everything that you spend for a while, like for a month or so. Write down everything you spend your money on and take a look at that. And see if there's any way you could tweak it. So for example, say that water bill that you were talking about. You might notice, but hey, there are only 3 of us in this house and this water bill is very high. So I need to make some steps to cut that down. The electricity bill, the telephone, food. So you put all of those areas on which you spend your money, and then you start to make your budget from that. You figure out, can I continue, especially if I am not saving, or if I have something that I need money for further down the road, and there is no way if I continue like this that I'll be able to take out money to, for that purpose. So you look at that and you see where you can tweak it. What will I do to cut down the food bill? Will it mean that I will not buy food every day? I will take lunch instead? What can I do to cut down the water bill, the light bill, things like that, the entertainment bill, So
I always tell people that food bill is one that we don't realize adds up very much. When you buy breakfast, lunch, and sometimes pick up dinner several times a week.
And snacks
you are
in between.
Spending so much.
It does add up.
What about the idea of disposable income? When you've taken care of all your primary financial responsibilities and then you have a surplus, I find that most people tend to use this extra money for things that may arguably be irrelevant or unnecessary at that point. They realize, whoa, I have an extra $50, Marlene. Let me go and, get a haircut or do something, well, not necessarily a haircut, but spend it on something that may not necessarily be urgent or important in the grand scheme of things.
You remember we talked about putting together your plan first, exactly what you want to accomplish. And one of the advantages of putting this thing down on paper and planning it with your family and so on is because you focus on it then. So if you have an extra amount, then you could figure, but my plan is to do so and so in a certain time, I could put this money towards it. So but if you didn't have a plan, it would be the first thing indeed to to blow it on something that's not important because you're not remembering that you have a plan, you have something that you want to accomplish. So when you have additional money for whatever reason, and that is hard to come by these days, you look to see where you could put it. And even if it means splurging it, but at least you have an idea that you've taken care of the other things, and then you could go ahead and splurge. I put that last.
You have your fixed expenses, your rent, mortgage, your loan payments. Things that you can't really tweak.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you have the other stuff that you can be able to cut down on. So let's say you record all your expenses and you realize, I'm spending so much money on gas for the car and so much money on food. Like I buy groceries and I'm paying for all these extra meals in between. What do you recommend? And that's what I was asking you earlier. Is it that you budget for what you're already spending on water and electricity and cable? Or are you going to decide how much you want to pay and try to stick within that? What is the proper budgeting?
Yes, that is it now. So based on your income, on your inflows of money, you look on your outflows, what you will spend your money on, and then you tweak that.
Okay.
Meaning that when you look at it and you're realizing that you're not doing some of the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
So for example, say you want to save $500 by May. But when you write down everything that you have, you're noticing there's no way I could save $500 by May. Then you make a decision. I will need to cut back on certain things. I will need to make sure that they turn off the lights.
Yeah.
You know, that running pipe that needs to be fixed because money is going on water.
Yeah.
Buying food every day, we have to cut that down so that we could save a little bit, more, so that we could achieve that goal. Driving everywhere.
Taking up your fuel bill.
Exactly. Managing your transportation so that you could save a little bit more on fuel, so that you could put that towards. You could cut down those items and you could put it towards where you want to go.
Or going out for drinks 2 nights a week every weekend.
Cut that to 1.
Yeah.
Or less, or you do less if you have the control to do it. So that figure that you could comfortably work with, that is what you would use as your budget, and then you work towards it. Every month this is what we are going to spend on so and so. If, for example, the light bill goes up for any reason, especially around Christmas, you put up those lights, you could say, well, we'll have to cut back on something else, because remember, you have a goal. I want to do so and so by so and so. We want to put some money towards that, and we won't be able to do it if if the bills just keep going up and the income isn't going up as much. So it is making a plan. Making a conscious effort rather than just leaving it to chance.
Now here's the thing, and I think this is what scares a lot of people about budgeting. It almost feels like living a very restrictive life. I'm cutting down on eating out with friends. I'm cutting down on going out for drinks. I'm cutting down on the fun things that I'm working for.
Yeah.
How do you talk to people about being able to prioritize, or sometimes even just shifting to a more cost-effective method, like cooking and inviting people over, or hosting drinks with 1 bottle at your house?
For me, it always comes back to what you want to achieve. That first step. What do you want to? What are your plans? What do you want to achieve, and how are you going to do it? You have to do it by sacrificing. Really, that is the word right there. So, sacrificing I read a quote yesterday. It says, live like no other now, so that you could live like no other later. And to me, that's it in a nutshell. Do the sacrifice now, so that later on you could accomplish the things that you want to accomplish, because you have major things ahead, like retirement. So for some people it's medical issues. These things that you are responsible for taking care of.
And if you have kids, there's always an emergency.
There is school. You want to get them educated. Things like that. If you don't have your house, you want to get your house.
Those are some of the long-term goals that we can't really we shouldn't shy away from. When you look at the fact that with parenting comes education, when you look at the fact that with retirement and old age come medical expenses, and when you look at the fact that at some point in all of that, you still want to or should be able to say, I own a house, I own properties or what have you. Those are some of the goals and the objectives that you would want to accomplish, let's say over your lifetime. But those are goals that you can't really avoid. They're there.
Okay. So we have some tips for single parents here.
Oh yes, so
we thought that salary trying to make that work.
I should have put a man there too, right?
It does happen.
Make it gender equal.
So for somebody who there's only one income coming in, and things are tight for a lot of people. It is hard for a lot of people. You focus on the priorities. Like food and shelter for you and your children, utilities, putting aside a little money. And sometimes some people think that it's, I don't make enough money to put aside any emergency fund. But we do know that emergencies happen.
Yeah.
So think about what you can not do or do to make sure that you put a little money in that emergency fund. It might mean I'm not drinking any soft drink. It might mean I won't buy any fried chicken today. I'll put that towards it.
And put what you can.
Put what you can. And with time, it adds up over time. And I would even say put it in a separate account. If you don't want to put it in your regular account where it's easy to access it, put it in a separate account that you call your emergency fund, so that when your child is ill, or you need, or the gas finish unexpectedly, or the vehicle or whatever, you have that money to take care of you and those people that you're responsible for. The point is that if you are responsible for these things, then plan to make sure that you're able to take up your responsibility. And of course, live within your means. That's not to say sometimes, if you can afford to do this really splurging, if there's the windfall gain or whatever, but, really keep focus on what you want to achieve. And live within your means. Look for discounts and things like that when you're shopping. Avoid high interest debt. Sometimes we go to the money lenders and so on, and those are high interest debt. So try to avoid those. Consider the importance of spending time versus money. It's not all about have to spend money on certain things to give gifts or whatever. Think about spending time.
You don't have to take the kids to the movies. You could have a night at home.
Exactly.
A family movie night.
Things like that. Yeah.
And the idea of this too shall pass.
Oh yeah, they will grow up. And if you do it right, they will be independent.
Or they'll be assisting you. And I think a lot of people learn to grow up and help.
Yeah.
Especially if they're younger ones. Extended family.
Okay, for the extended family, I have one thing to say, and that's it right there. That everyone who earns an income must contribute financially. And those who don't, and are, they're in their sound mind, they have good health and whatever, they must contribute in kind. So, for example, if you have people in this extended family who are not working out and making money, and they're at home, you shouldn't have to pay somebody to do anything. They should help. Right? So
and that's key, because we have a lot of, and it causes a lot of issues within families. You have one or two who don't contribute or don't contribute enough. And it's not about splitting equally. It's about what people can afford.
What people can afford. So it means sitting down and talking about it. Something that we don't, necessarily. That's not we easily do, but it will certainly make things better. Then, of course, self-employed people. A lot of people are self-employed, and what happens when you're self-employed is that sometimes your income is cyclical. There are times when you make a lot of money, and sometimes you don't make anything. So the important thing there is to budget. And know what your cycle is like, and then take care those months when you're earning quite a bit. You have to budget so that you save some of that money for those months when you don't make.
What I find, and I'm just trying to see how synonymous cyclical and inconsistent can be.
Oh, probably the same thing. Just a cyclical, more like, inconsistent. What we call it when it's inconsistent is hand to mouth. Even sometimes when it's hand to mouth, there are times when you make more money than you expected. So the idea is don't blow it all. Because you know that there will come a time when you won't have that money, and when you'll be.
And this is important for self-employed persons, because business isn't always great all year round. So you do have to know what your peak seasons are and how that sustains you for the rest of the time. Nice. And speaking about cutting down on expenses, I want to go before that.
Okay.
You're going into debt management, but I wanted to do savings for a second, because we always miss that one. You always speak about maintaining different savings accounts, and not just a savings and a regular use, but you talk about having a savings for emergency, short term, and long term, right? Let's talk about that. I mean, that seems like a lot to be able. You usually say pay yourself first.
Yes, that's what I say. But you could put it in one account if you could manage it. If you're saving for long term, and also medium and short, you don't want to sabotage your long term for this immediate thing. So, I mean, if you could manage it, fine. The important thing is to recognize what you're doing it for. Because sometimes, a lot of times, if we're just saving, you know, we use it for anything. But if you have a specific purpose that you're saving for, that makes it a little easier to manage, or for you to say, no, I won't do that because I don't have enough money to do that.
Okay.
You know. So it is important to save. The rule of thumb is that you save 10% of your income. For some people, they might think that that is only for retirement.
Yeah.
But the earlier you start, the better.
Now, what's the difference between this long-term saving, short-term saving, and emergency fund?
Okay, all right. So the emergency fund is for emergencies, those things that you don't, you know they will happen because you hear it all the time.
Yeah.
And you know from experience that you do have emergencies sometimes.
Yeah.
And you need quick finances, money right now to take care of them. Example, say the car tire blow out unexpectedly, you need to change that.
Yeah.
Your child gets ill, you need money to do that. You probably think, well, I could go and borrow, but if you need money right away, you know, the opportunity to borrow might not be there, or you might be all loaned up anyway, that you won't be able to. So it makes sense to put aside some money for emergencies, and those, and that, you know, you just put that aside. And we talked earlier, sometime before, about what determines how much should be in your emergency fund. It all depends on what your lifestyle is. And just one example, if you have a car or you have a bicycle, the more assets you have, or the more people you're responsible for, the bigger should be your emergency fund.
Okay.
If you have a bicycle, if the wheel goes out, you might need $10 to fix it. If you have a car, the tire go out, you need more than that to fix it.
Much more than
right?
that.
So you look on you. So there's not one size fits all. You have to look on your situation and see what will work for you.
So always save for those types of emergencies. Have something that if
easy access.
Sunday afternoon, you know, you couldn't even go in to get a loan if you needed to. You can go to the bank and get that.
Yes. And then you have the
short term.
Short term. So that is like within the next year that you want to put. It could be anything from getting your child back to school.
Maybe graduation is next year.
Graduation. You have an anniversary coming up. You want to, you know, do something special for that, or a birthday or whatever. So it is figuring out how much will I need for that. We spoke earlier in the earlier segment, we talked about SMART goals. It relates to this as well. How much will I need, and how much do I need to put aside for that? And you could work towards that. And then there's the long term. And the long term doesn't necessarily mean that it's bigger things, but usually it is. That it takes a longer time for you to put yourself in a position to reach those objectives. And the long term could be a big vacation. See that, you know, you add these nice things into it. It could be getting ready for your house, right? It could be getting married. For some people it's long, for some people it's short.
It's your retirement plan.
Your retirement, that's the most important one. That's the long-term one, depending on where you are. If you're older and you're just looking for putting aside something for retirement, then that becomes short-term. You know, so it is, again, I think the very first step in budgeting is the most important.
You spoke about the emergency fund. One of the things I know that is also very crucial is for sudden changes in one's employment. And usually it is said, is it 6 months? You give yourself 6 months?
They say 6 months. For some people it might be a year. The rule of thumb there is, how long will it take for you to get another job? Right? So for some people it might be 3 months. But the rule of thumb is like 6 months.
So have enough saved that if tomorrow you lose your job or have to leave your job, let's say your child gets sick and you have to stay with them.
You have to stay home.
That you have enough to
cover. That you have to cover you for that period. That is a very important point.
And it happens.
It happens, yes. It happens.
We've seen it with cancer patients where the spouse has to be the caretaker and both of them are unemployed at that point.
Yes. So that is, you know, that is a reality check that I'm very glad you brought up. Because it happens. It happens, you know, where you lose your job for whatever reason. And if you have not been putting aside money, what do you do? What do you do? And who will lend you money if you don't have a job, if you cannot repay? You know, so we have to take care of these things and plan. It's all about planning.
So we have our final words here.
Final words. Okay, we'll talk about the debt or not.
Oh, well, let's do quickly the debt. That is important, right? So the debt.
Yes. So sometimes we get caught up. You know, we borrow more than we can afford, and the idea is to stop. You know, just don't borrow anymore and sacrifice so that you get this thing back on track. So stop and think. Make a budget, and you know, we went through the steps. Make that budget and try to stick to it. And then sometimes an easy out will be, well, let's refinance. But how many times can you refinance and keep it affordable? You know, so you will refinance if the interest rate is lower. You know, you're able to do that. But what refinancing does too, it drags out the payment. So it gives you more wiggle room. But you have to consider, will I just sacrifice for a little while longer and get out of this rather than extend this agony
and have more money to spend in a month?
So you have to really look at it and see what will work best for you. Sometimes it's best for you to focus on repaying. Let's pay this off and put some discipline in our lives, stop borrowing for everything and live within our means, sacrifice, instead of just keep on refinancing.
And here's a good one, the consolidation process. When do you consider, I mean, I've heard people where they're really drowning, you know, in managing payments. And they don't consider going in to consolidate their loans. What's your advice there?
Well, for consolidation, you do that sometimes because you want, instead of several payments, you want one payment. Get it, you know, just deal with one payment. So that's a pro. Sometimes it is because you've really overextended yourself and you're paying out more than you can afford. And so it probably makes sense for you to consolidate, extend the payment, but then you have to put some discipline in there. And then sometimes too, if you consolidate a loan that you'll finish paying off in the next 2 or 3 months, maybe it will be best if you just sacrifice and, you know, reach the end of that rather than extending that for a longer period. So each case is different. But if you're in that situation, consider what you can do to make things easier, but at the same time you have to put some discipline in there so that you don't get back in the same position. Because you know what happens sometimes, you refinance, you consolidate, it's easier, you have more wiggle room, but then you go right back to where you were, and that doesn't help you.
All right, let's go. Final words.
Okay, final words. Live below your means. You know, live like no other today, so you could live like no other tomorrow. Of course, the additional 10% is for you to save. Include your family in budgeting. That helps. Because they're part of the process. Keep your objectives and your goals in sight. Sit down, decide what you want to do, and keep those in sight. Start an emergency fund. Look to see how you could reduce expenses and also how you could increase income. And make sacrifices.
All right. Well, Coreen, thank you for having that conversation
with
us that many people don't like to have, but that is so absolutely important, right? So hopefully this year will be the year for some families to be able to get their finances in order, or at least manageable, that it's not a constant burden for them, right? So we're going to go ahead now and take our final break, and when we come back, we'll have our wrap-up, so stay tuned.